Hey guys, it's Chris. Once again, we're working on the 2005 Dodge Grand Caravan. I have a valve cover leak, so we're going to be doing some Felpros. And the part number, this is a 3.8 liter V6 2005. Part number is VS50599R. Fits the 3.3 and the 3.8. Yep. And a Jeep 2007, blah 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 blah, all these different models. So I've seen many of these videos where people pull the whole cowl off and the windshield wiper motor assembly and remove the power steering assembly and the coolant hose and the intake manifold and the air box and the battery and the coil pack. You don't need to do any of that crap. You're just asking for more trouble with more gaskets on the intake manifold and the upper intake manifold, and then you have the valley tray in the bottom. Once you get that off, it has like a V gasket with 2 bolts on each end, one there and one there. And why bother? If you just have a valve cover leak, why don't you just replace your valve cover? People were like, well, you can't get to the bolts because there's 2 bolts here that you can't get to. Well, that's a bunch of baloney, because if you use a 8mm socket on a 1/4 inch drive with a swivel head, you can get right in here, hopefully. And these are like 8 foot-pound, if that, so they're plastic into aluminum. And get this bolt on there, and there it is. So we're just gonna loosen them. And it's a little tough to see in there, so I usually like to feel and make sure the socket is on fully, and then give it a twist. Once you loosen them up, I guess I don't need the swivel for this one. You can just remove them. And I didn't take the other ones all the way out yet. When you get to the end units, now these should not come all the way out. They have a little rubber piece underneath, so don't go yanking them. Just get them loose till they feel like they're done. This one and this one are going to require a deep well. And how you'll remove those is there's a spark plug piece of plastic. Just give it a wiggle and this will come off. Now mine look pretty crusty, so, and it's starting to rain, and it's 34 degrees out right now. So I'm just going to take a deep well 8, stick that over there, remove my swivel head. Normally I have a tripod set up to do this, but it's not that bad. And this one, just remember the long bolts are the lower ones in front of you. Now for the rear, it's the same scenario. It's just you're going to have a hard time seeing. But you can reach. Now this up here is in your way a lot of times. So if you reach around the side here, right, you can get right to the bolts. 1, 2. The rest are the same. And you can, now there's a coolant hose here for the air conditioning. There's also a PCV valve hose here. And there is another hose that's like a heater hose or something that's usually in the way, but you can pull up on it. It's this hose right here. Actually, power steering. So you can pull up on this and it comes out of the way. There's a compression clamp back down here. You can't really see it too well. Let me see if I can zoom in on it. That silver clamp right there. See it? You could take that out of the way, but it's full of power steering fluid, so why bother? That's right off the pump. So what we're going to do is we're going to do it the blind way, but saving myself an hour and a half, gasket hell, and parts everywhere to do it without. So for now, we're going to focus on this one. We're going to continue removing the bolts that are the long ones. These are out. Since I've already cracked these loose, you might get a little oil dribble. Maybe. Man, it's cold out here. Okay, so we're just gonna turn this the rest of the way. We'll have to remove the one evap hose right here on this breather tube. Now, since it's so cold, my hands are freezing. I am not going to do the back one today because it's starting to rain. I don't feel like sitting out in the rain to do this. Okay, so whoops, my socket popped off there. I dropped it. So if you drop your tools, like so many of my 10 millimeters have been, I just have a magnet. That way I can reach in and grab my socket that I drop. Now, while this is getting wet, I will just sit on the back of the Firebird here and show you what we're talking about. When you remove your valve cover, your gasket set will look like this, or similar, or exactly. It's a metal core gasket, silicone. This will fit into, this is the surface, it'll fit into these guides in the valve cover. The bolts on them have these little rubber grommets. Take note of the direction they're in. They only go on one way. There's a lip on the one side here, and the other side, see that lip? The other side's like the top part. So the bolt presses through the valve cover with a little rubber grommet on it to hold it in place. There's a fat head of it that goes through this. That way the gasket will stick to it. You do not need to use any ATV, Permatex, sealant, anything on here. So let me put the camera down for a second. I'll pop the valve cover off, which is just basically, I'm going to knock this loose. There we go. Pull this hose out. Let me put the camera down and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so I removed the hose and I just tucked it right here. So with this loose, now if you are running into issues with getting your wrench stuck a lot or whatever, what you can do is when you're on your deep well socket, and let's say it's starting to bump the intake manifold here at the top, you can tilt this a little bit because the other screws are loose, and then you can just pop it right out, and there you go. So now this is totally loose. Wiggle and remove. Now over here on the car, I'll show you what I'm talking about. See the grommets here? If I pull this out, oh my, I'll have to whop it out. But they fit through. That way they hold. The bolt has a little metal piece on the bottom that goes through. So you can push them out. And I can't do it both-handed, so let me grab a pair of pliers. Okay. Let's try and do this one-handed. But you will grab this and kind of, this is just cracked. Just work these out. Now with two hands, it's going to be much simpler. I just want to get one out to show you. Okay, so here's one removed. Alright. See how this bolt has this cap on it? See that? That cap has this little rubber piece in it. And if you push really hard, the cap, this metal flange will slide up and down, but it doesn't slide off. It slides the rubber pieces on it. See that rubber thing right here? Well, we gotta get that off. But the new ones are very malleable. So I'm going to take this and slide it over this head, not with one freaking hand, and we're going to put another one on. Okay, with the second hand out of the way, I took my pliers and went like that, and it pops right off the head. The flat part goes toward the flat part of this washer, so we're going to put the other one on and just squish this in, and these are so soft I can just run them around my finger and squish it on. Bloop. There we go. This will go back into the valve cover. The grommet will seat the this metal thing will slide up and down. So I'm going to slide the metal thing down. So this will go through, and you push a little bit, and the grommet will then seat in here, and it's going to hold, the gasket's going to hold it. So that's it. So let me repeat this process and clean this part up with some brake parts cleaner, and I just knocked a bunch of dirt in there, and we'll go for reassembly. Okay, so I put the gasket in with the rib side, just putting it in the hole. When I just ripped these off, so I just gave them a twist, ripped them off, put the new ones on. You'll see this little rubber lip here, and this bead. Well, there's a lip inside of here that this piece has to go through. So when you put this in, you can squish the gasket around it. I can't do this very well with one hand, but with two, it will look like this, and your bolt will slide freely and the gasket will hold. I'm going to repeat that and note the location of the two long bolts are always in the front. What I did find when removing the gasket, this side came off cleanly. It was very hard through here and cracked and brittle, probably because the exhaust is underneath and this gets more heat. So that's where my leak was, and it was totally cracked, and here's a little piece of it. It's very brittle. It still moves, but it's holding that shape. So it's very hard. Cracked it right in half. So that was my leak cause, and probably yours too. So let me continue with the gasket insertion, the bolt insertion. Okay, with not holding the camera, that took maybe 20 seconds to push all them in. So I'm just gonna make sure my surface is wiped clean. It is starting to rain, so I did toss a couple rags over the block, and looks pretty clean to me. I mean, there's a little bit of crusty up there, which I can just wipe, but the surface is that part, so there's no major crap on it. And it had been leaking, weeping for a while, and it started to really brown out these and stink, and you can see there was some goop, oil actually, on the spark plug wire from where it had been dripping and burning for a long time. So now the reassembly is just reverse of the installation. Luckily I don't have to worry about any bolts falling out or anything. It's kind of nice. So we're just gonna one-handedly try to reinsert this. Does it go this way or this way? Yep. Do the belly wipe because I just stuck it in the wetness. And it just goes back on here like so. Move this little wire out of the way. And we're just gonna finger tighten down the bolts. Remember, this is, you can put some anti-seize on here if you want to, but you don't have to. Well, I'm sure you guys know how to tighten bolts, so let me use both of my hands and tighten these bolts up, and then I'll put this hose back on and my oil cap. So here we are, we're reassembled, the bolts are back in, you can see the new gasket. I do have a squeaky belt because I squirted some of that crap to clean off this area and some goop got on it, so hopefully it'll shut up in a minute when it dries or whatever. But no leaks. I'm going to let it run for a few minutes just to be sure. Then I'm going to squirt this area down when it cools with some engine degreaser. Yay!